everyone. I'm Steve Scott from WCBS News Radio 880. From the Adorama Live Theater in Soho, this is the WCBS Conversation. And our guest today, United States Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start with Russia's alleged meddling in the presidential election. Leader McConnell said today he'd like to see the Senate Intelligence Committee look into this. Do you agree?
Well, I'd like to see it taken to another level. I mean, this is an unbelievable reality where you have another nation state trying to undermine what is, I think, a sacrosanct element of any democracy, the electoral process. I think you're hearing leaders on both sides of the aisle not making this partisan, from John McCain to Chuck Schumer saying we should take this to another level. So I'd like to see a special select committee. But either way, we need to move with a sense of urgency to getting to the bottom of exactly what happened.
Do you think Russia, through meddling, hacking, or whatever, played any role in the outcome of the presidential election?
I don't know. I mean, I know what the accusation evidence is about a lot of the Russian countries that are surrounding it, like the Baltics. There's a lot of nefarious stuff that I've been told by leaders of those countries that they try to do through the media, and far more overt, not just hacking, but newspapers and the like. So I know this is not beyond what I think the Russians are capable of. Whether they made a difference in the outcome, I don't think we should be necessarily focusing on that right now. I think we should get to the bottom of what the facts are and go where the facts lead us. I don't think this should be approached from a way to attack Donald Trump or what have you. I think it should be a way to go about what is the role that they played, what was the extent of the hacking, and then ultimately answer the question is that did it have an impact?
The fact that Leader McConnell and Senator McCain say they would like to see it investigated, does that give you hope that it could be a bipartisan, non-attack type of investigation?
Yeah, absolutely. This should come to, this is a point of pride. I mean, we are Americans, and to think that the Russians are coming to our nation and trying to undermine our democracy should get every American upset. Leave partisan politics aside. I have very strong emotions and feelings about the outcome of the election, but this to me goes to the core, I think, of all of us as Americans about what we stand for and what we should not tolerate from any foreign government.
I want to follow up on that. You say you have strong feelings. Disappointed by the outcome or more? The fix was in?
Well, I'm not just disappointed. I think that's beyond the way I feel. I mean, I never thought, I never imagined, I didn't see this my entire time of political consciousness, really, from the time I think Gerald Ford was the first Republican I watched running for office. I've just never seen a candidate from either office so overtly demean and degrade other Americans on their pathway to the White House, from disabled folks to immigrants. I mean, questioning a federal judge's ability, born in Indiana, ability to do their job because of their heritage. And so this was one of those elections that was so gravely disappointing to me, to see this person now ascending to the White House. And it has me understandably upset, but frankly, it has a lot of other Americans afraid. You know, we're hearing now from lots of our constituents from different backgrounds, from women to Muslims, who people are just literally afraid of the President of the United States and what they might do in that office. Not only things like the Muslim registry, but also the fact that you could have a president who has routinely demeaned women, now being the preeminent spokesperson for this country over years in which lots of people, men and women, boys and girls, are coming of age, what damage that can do to just the civility of our nation. So this is a very, very troublesome time for me. And while I'm on guard on should he try to do things, and when he puts somebody like Bannon on his staff as his chief quote-unquote strategist, somebody whose strategy was focused on elevating a media platform that was offensive, whether Republican or Democrat, that kind of things that they were elevating, kind of voices. They call it alt-right. I call it bigotry and sexism in its worst forms. That's somebody he's surrounding himself. I think it has me and many other people really on guard.
When you woke up the morning of November 8th, did you fully expect that Hillary Clinton would be elected president and that Democrats would win control of the United States Senate? How shocked were you when you woke up the morning of November 9th?
I woke up that morning, I had the very most foreboding dream that I actually told a lot of my friends about during that day. I just felt that whole day something was about to happen horribly wrong. I was asked to go to Brooklyn, you know, to some of these watch parties, including the one. I just decided to sit home in Newark and watch on TV because something didn't feel right to me. And then obviously the results came in.
When did you turn it off?
I watched until 1 or 2 in the morning, and then had the fitful of any sleep.
You know, the Electoral College will cast its votes for president next week. 10 members are demanding an intelligence briefing. They'd like to learn more about a possible connection between the Trump campaign and Russia. Should they get that briefing before they cast their electoral votes?
Again, this is what's frustrating me, that it's taking us this long to really launch an investigation, whether it's CIA or Congress. I think America has a right to know, and I think these electors are asking the right questions. But you know, the legitimacy of our elections is such an important part, fundamental part of who we stand for as a nation. So the questions that they're asking, I understand where they're coming from.
Electors in some states are bound to vote as their states voted, but others are free agents. They can actually cast their electoral college votes for whomever they'd like. Would you encourage any electors to go rogue, so to speak?
Well, this is clearly what we have here. Is we have a election where Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Not just the majority of Americans, but a significant majority, by 2 to 3 million people, voted for her. Now, Donald Trump relied on something called the Electoral College to win, and that's the rules of the game, and I accept the rules of the game. Well, the rules also say that those electors can do, many of them can do what they want, and they should be able to do what they want. So vote their conscience as electors. I encourage every single one to vote their conscience.
So if there are electors whose states voted for Donald Trump, but to those individuals it doesn't pass the stink test, you would recommend them to cast their electoral votes?
I would tell them to do what they feel like they are sworn to do when they were elected to that job. They should follow their conscience. And this is what I say. If some of them don't, and people want to get upset, then let's revisit the whole Electoral College, especially us in New Jersey, New York. This is a system that really undermines the democratic representation of states like ours. So I think this whole system should be re-examined, and perhaps if some people abide by the law of the land as electors and do what they want to do because they're not legally bound, this is an electoral college system, perhaps that will go further in bringing into question a system that I think it does not serve the highest interest of our democracy.
But you won't go so far as to say, hey, listen, if you think Hillary Clinton would be a better president, vote for her.
I think that the electors should act in accordance with their conscience. And again, according to the rules, many of them have the ability to do what they want to do. It's the same thing that is confusing. I saw the confusion. Wait a minute. The winner of the popular vote does not win the election. I thought we were a democracy. Well, no, we have an electoral college that has certain rules, and there are individuals that have the freedom to vote for who they choose, and I think that they should vote their conscience.
Unless something unusual happens, something right out of Madam Secretary or something like that, Donald Trump will become
show I just
president.
began watching, by the way. It's now my late night watching, trying to fall asleep.
Donald Trump will become president, and Republicans will control the Senate, the House, and the White House. Are there issues of common ground where you can work with the Republican majority?
So understand that I've been operating with them. There's been a Republican majority for the last Congress, have passed legislation in this Congress in partnership with other Republicans, whether it's efforts to get the new tunnels underneath the Hudson. I was able to work with Roger Wicker of Mississippi and get a lot done on that, or whether it was advancing legislation on criminal justice reform. With Senate Republicans, I've got great working relationships, many of them that I value and consider friends. Trump is a whole different story for me. I'm already gearing up for the fight. When he wants to put people in places like Jeff Sessions as the Attorney General of the United States of America, one of the few outliers, even amongst Republicans in the Senate, that's been blocking criminal justice reform, that will try to unwind a lot of the progress under the Obama administration, I'm ready to fight. When he puts people in other offices, be it the Secretary of Labor recommendation, somebody that's against raising the minimum wage, that is against unions, I'm ready to fight. So we're going to come out of the blocks, and while I'm looking forward to partnering with my Republican colleagues, as we have been for the last 2 years, when it comes to the person who's the President of the United States right now, the first thing I'm doing is rolling up on my sleeves and getting ready to fight against people I think that are going to undermine this country's best interest.
I've heard senators and representatives from both sides of the aisle say that perhaps infrastructure could be a starting point of a bipartisan movement?
Well, look, again, I cooperated with Chris Christie, and I have worked hard on this tunnel projects. And when it comes to the best interest of my residents, I'm always going to look at this. But please understand, what I've heard from Donald Trump about infrastructure is problematic. It sounds more like corporate giveaways and tax breaks as opposed to real investments in infrastructure. So I've seen nothing coming from him that gives me a sense that there's common ground. I see the way he's approaching everything from infrastructure investment, frankly, even to healthcare, that to me seems like a real threat. There's been no olive branches to Democrats at all. If anything, what we've seen from his appointments is he's picking not only people that are conservative or Republican, but he's picking people from the far right of his party to take a lot of these seats. So I'm not hopeful, I'm not optimistic, but I have a track record for being one of those people in Congress that works across the aisle every single day to get things done. Unfortunately, I see a president right now that seems like he wants to govern from the margins.
Let's look at a big infrastructure project, and that's the Gateway project to build a new rail tunnel under the Hudson River. You and some of your local Senate colleagues have been providing an update on that. Where do we stand with the Gateway project?
Well, you know, I came into office at a time that you had almost dueling press conferences and insults going back and forth between folks. A program had been killed by Chris Christie for reasons that he had. And so one of the first things that my effort was just try to get people to stop yelling at each other. We had a summit meeting in my office with everybody from the Secretary of Transportation, Governor Christie, Bob Menendez, and agreed on a plan. Got New York to buy in and join us in that plan, I should say. And now we suddenly have great progress. We have a development corporation that's been created between the two states. We have legislation, as I mentioned earlier, that we were able to get passed that creates funding mechanisms on the federal level. You even have New Jersey stepping up and starting to try to solve some of its transportation trust fund issues to really make a better financial partner for this endeavor. And so now we're hitting lots of benchmarks. We have momentum going to take, sorry to forgive the pun, but we took a program that was off track, and now we have it on the tracks moving forward. And New Jerseyans are outraged at where we are right now with these two decaying tunnels that have really are causing the kind of delays, and the Portal Bridge is another part of this project, that are causing delays to the point now that I hear from my constituents that it's eroding their quality of life because they cannot rely on the predictability of New Jersey transit. So they either have to move out of New Jersey or leave at obnoxious hours that take away time from sleep and their family.
Have you heard anything from the president-elect or his team about the Gateway project? Is the president-elect on board with this? Can this project survive partisan politics?
Well, this will be a test. I mean, it's a product of bipartisan politics now when you have Governor Cuomo, Governor Christie, two different parties coming together and saying that this is important. You have the Secretary of Transportation and the president indicating that this is the most important transportation project, infrastructure project in the United States of America, the busiest river crossing in North America, causing clogs, not just between New York and New Jersey, but the entire Northeast corridor. The most profitable rail section in the country is being choked right now. So we've been able to do a lot under President Obama that moved this to the point where it's almost like a layup now for the new president. Something that all he has to do is sort of continue the momentum on and get to take the credit for getting it done. So I have a lot of hope that given the fact that this has been a bipartisan effort from the start, that he will continue with this project. And he's a New Yorker and should understand that for this region, this is not just an important project, it is a critical one.
You know, there's one area where there is some common ground between you and the president-elect, and that's Twitter. He communicates a lot via Twitter. You have used Twitter to engage your constituents in New Jersey. As a veteran on Twitter, what advice would you give the president-elect?
You know, for advice for him would be probably to stay off, because he's something that we call in the Twitter universe a troll. I mean, he just spews a lot of toxin and insults towards people. I mean, he can't even help himself from criticizing Saturday Night Live. And you know, what I try to do on Twitter is, number one, I tell everybody, be authentic, be who you are, but also be positive and show grace and kindness. There's enough toxicity out there. So I'm disappointed with the way he uses the platform. It is a powerful tool. It's a tool of the future in terms of communications in a fractured media environment. But I do believe that the energy you put out into the universe, regardless of who you are, is really important. And at a time There's enough people out there that are trying to demean and degrade folks in social media context. I'm sure you've even seen that kind of thing. I'd like it when people try to elevate folks, elevate the dialogue, to show a level of civility. And for those of us that are in positions of authority, we have to set the standard for this country. And we have a president right now that's not setting a standard. I think his dialogue is enabling a lot of people for the trolls, labeling a lot of people who are preaching hate out there. And instead of leading us to a higher unifying level, I think he's leading us into the gutter.
Is this a new normal for communication, though? I mean, we have to admit, this isn't FDR in 1941. We don't see the president always gather in front of a big gaggle of microphones. Is this technology moving forward? Is Twitter the new news conference?
Yes, I think that it's not. I don't think it'll ever replace a news conference. Let's be real. I think that there is such an important role still for a lot of those traditional means of communication. But for me, even sometimes, it's a much better way to get directly to your constituency. There's hundreds of thousands of New Jerseyans that follow me on Facebook, Twitter, even I have a lot of followers on Instagrams, and it's a wonderful way for me to go right to people and develop an audience of people that are really looking for that kind of information. And so I feel grateful. I mean, I have millions of people that follow me on social media now from all across the country. Even when I was a mayor, though, it created a level of partnership in government that I didn't imagine. In other words, when people were driving in Newark, instead of just passing by a traffic light that was out or a pothole, they began to just take pictures of it or tweet me about it. And actually, I started finding out about potholes before my road crews, traffic lights out before my traffic engineers. It lifted the level of accountability to government and created transparency and dialogue that was really valuable. So at its best, social media can be a way to elevate conversation, partnership, collaborations, could bring people together. At its worst, it could be a lot of depravity, it could be a lot of meanness, it could be a lot of hurt. And I hope that we see it just like television, where it's a neutral platform, but many people have been able to use it for some really transcendent moments in American culture. I'm hoping that Twitter and social media in general, especially for those of us who want to be leaders, that we realize that we can serve a higher purpose with these social media platforms by elevating the conversation and dialogue in this country.
You know, there's a phrase that has really come to prominence in the latter half of 2016, fake news.
Yes.
And for those of us who work hard every day and take pride in our craft and try to deliver honest, researched, unbiased journalism,
Right.
it's very frustrating, first of all, to have that term even exist. But I think it knocks everybody down a peg in the world of journalism. Is fake news here to stay? Is it a passing fad? What do you make of it?
Well, I think that it is, we're going through a period of a lot of uncertainty in media. And I saw this, just the difference between me as mayor of Newark and now the mayor of Newark. We had 2 and 3 reporters covering City Hall through the Star Ledger, our state's largest newspaper, columnists covering it. And now that that had brought so much to democracy in the local level in New Jersey, is now gone. The paper is a fraction of what it used to be before. So I think we're going through this painful period of uncertainty. And I think what's going to emerge on the other end of this is that America is going to start to realize and crave for authentic, trusted brands that are going to start to see a resurgence on the other end of this tumultuous time. So I don't, this is not pandering, forgive me, but CBS is one of those sources of news that I grew up with that I think a lot of folks are going to find ways to start gravitating back. But that also means that CBS and CBS Radio has to get up with the times as well and start to lean into a lot of these new platforms and start to market itself as a trusted brand that it is. Because I've had family members of mine send me things and immediately I know they're fake, but they're believing them, the trash that they're picking up on the internet. And I think that more and more people are going to realize that they're hungering for trusted sources. And that's going to be their curation of everything from, you know what, I wake up in the morning, I want to see CBS, but I also really believe in ex-columnists from the New York Times. I'm going to start following them and listening to them as well. And I think that that's where we're going to start seeing an emergence of people that are trusted news organizations like this one, as well as individuals out there that people really trust and believe in.
The outgoing Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid says FBI Director James Comey cost the Democrats the election. Do you buy that?
You know, when I was a mayor, I used to always say, "In God we trust," but everybody else bring me data. And because it got to a point where people were making lots of claims and whatever, I just need to look at the numbers. And so I think Comey did a major disservice to the American people. I think that what he did in the final days of the election is almost inexcusable in the way that he broke with traditions of the past and entered into an election unnecessarily, became the story, and really, I think, made an impact. Now, how do you quantify that? I have no idea how you quantify that. But I think that the lesson to be taken away from this is not to blame an election loss on Comey. I think a lot of us Democrats can point to a lot of other things that were done wrong that could have contributed as well. But I think it's almost unassailable that what he did was a break with tradition and unbecoming, frankly, of that office, to weigh into a presidential election in a way that turned out to be completely unnecessary, to suddenly raise a red flag that cast aspersions on Secretary Clinton, and then moments before the election say, wait a minute, I'm sorry, do-over, timeout, there's nothing there, there's no there. That's a disservice he did to the American people, and I think that there should be some answering for that.
Would you have preferred that perhaps the FBI had conducted the investigation into the Anthony Weiner, Huma Abedin materials, and then talk about whatever the result was later?
Then if there was there, I mean, we know this who live in the New York City area, to throw Anthony Weiner's name out, so suddenly he's become a headline again. I mean, that's profoundly irresponsible on his part to think that doing that would not have caused problems in that election. He should have done the investigation, and should there have been anything of substance, he did have an obligation to turn something over. But that speculative encroachment into our elections was costly. I don't know what the cost was, but it definitely was costly in the last moments of an election where people are making up their mind.
You know, there seems to have been an uptick in hate crimes, bias crimes in the last...
No, this is data now. Doesn't seem to be. There is a significant upbeat in hate crimes in America.
Has the emergence and eventual election of Donald Trump contributed to that?
Absolutely it has. Donald Trump's language, his demeaning, degrading behavior, in my opinion, and again, this is no data to see this, but clearly, when you see what some of these crimes are happening, when they're using Trump's name in it, he gave license by what I think was irresponsible, demeaning, degrading behavior. And he has no shame in it. A guy, we brought up fake news. Here's a guy that would be lying to the American people, universally making claims, even as president-elect, still making completely false claims, trying to fuel segments of our society that now feel licensed to take that language and into their own lives to do, I think, significantly dark things with. So people take this lightly or think it's just politics. No. We've had hard-fought elections before. But we've never seen anything like this, where a candidate is willing to routinely lie to the American people as well as demean and degrade other Americans. And I think that it is a result of this election, the kind of hate crimes we're seeing right now. And I think all of us as Americans, Republicans and Democrats, should be demeaning, should be denouncing this kind of hatred, and doing everything we can to make sure that whoever you are in America, you know that you are a citizen of this country, welcomed, and that we need each other. I talk all the time about this idea of tolerance in our country, that we should tolerate each other, is such a cynical state of mind, which just says, I'm going to stomach your right to be different. If you disappear off the face of the earth, I'm no better or worse off, because I was just tolerating you as a fellow American. When we're called to a higher level than that, we're called to love each other. And love doesn't mean we always have to like each other or hang out or grab a beer together. But patriotism is love of country. You can't love your country without loving your fellow Americans. And love recognizes the dignity of each other, that we each have worth and value. And that, in fact, as a nation, we need each other to be successful. And so to have a president who's not loving other Americans, but talking routinely down on them, he's weakening us as a country and opening the door to more divisiveness. When we need to be, as a country, saying whether you're a Muslim American, a Baha'i, a Jain American, Buddhist American, Christian American, whatever, all of us are essential to this country's success. There's a saying that I grew up understanding. It goes back to the fall of the Second Temple of Jerusalem in the year 70, when they had fighting inside the holy city, and then Titus was able to take it with ease. It's just a testimony that's a truth for humanity, that if there's no enemy within, the enemy without can do you no harm. And right now, we have the greatest enemy we have is the hatred, divisiveness, and the settling for just tolerance as being the highest rung on the ladder. I'm sorry. The problem we have right now that worries me is even not just the hate of the some, it's the silence of the many. We need to raise a collective chorus of condemnation towards this kind of hatred and divisiveness in our country. Republican, Democrat, we need to unify at least around that we're not going to tolerate what Donald Trump has helped to unleash on our country.
As we prepare to wrap it up, you know, ever since you joined the Senate a few years ago, there have been some people who have looked at you and said, this guy could be president someday.
I think that was my mother. That might have been my mother spreading that fake news.
With Donald Trump's defeat of Hillary Clinton, could someday be 2020? Is this something you think about?
No, I think about January 3rd, when the new Congress is sworn in, and January 20th, when Donald Trump is. I've learned this all throughout my life in politics, that when people are so concerned about a future rung of a ladder, it often, they're so concerned with position that they forget their purpose. The people of New Jersey elected me to do a job, and now, even more so than the first 3 years, I feel a calling to fight for my state against what I think is going to be. Even Trump supporters are not looking to privatize Social Security, to block grant Medicare, to have somebody who doesn't even believe in a minimum wage, not to mention ideas of raising it. So I'm going to work after the holidays with a new determined sense of mission, a renewed, determined sense of mission to fight for my state.
But if a couple years from now, the leaders of your party come to you and say, Senator Booker, we think you may be our best chance, or one of our best chances, to win back the White House. Would you listen to them?
I can give you with a high level of certainty that will not happen. It's flattering to have people in the New York, New Jersey region say those kind of things to me. This is a big country. I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I know the best thing I can do right now for country and party is prepare for the coming Trump administration and get to work. So thank you for saying that. I know my mother put you up to that, but the reality is it's a lot of runway between now and 2020, and I'm not going to support, I'll make that declaration right now, I'm not going to support any Democrat that starts talking about 2020 and in many ways forgoes the important work and service that they should be doing right now for their country.
Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm Steve Scott from the Adorama Live Theater in Soho. Thank you for watching.